And I'm going to begin to record. Okay, we are recording now. Okay, so look at this. This is what we're going to try to understand. What we're going to try to understand is how companies decide the inputs they're going to hire and the quantities of inputs they're actually going to have. So what happens is this. Think about this. A typical company is in the business of producing products in order to maximize profits. Companies, in order to produce products, they need inputs. They need inputs. They need raw materials. They need workers. They need, natural resources and so on to be able to make the products. So a company has to pay for these resources that they're going to buy, the inputs they're going to buy. So then the question is, what inputs are we going to try to implement in the production of whatever we are making? You already know that a company is in the business of trying to maximize profits. So one of the ways in which they want to maximize profits is by paying the least amount of money for the resources they're going to use. In other words, pay less for the resources you're going to buy. So in many cases, they calculate, the cost, but you have to understand that the cost of a resource is not only what a company takes into considerations, because there are other factors, so there are other variables that we need to take into consideration to determine, for example, specifically the input that we're going to use. For example, we can hire a lot of workers, or we can just simply buy a lot of computers or a lot of machinery. Now, if we're going to hire workers, then the question is, okay, which workers we're going to hire? Now, think about this. Here we have this guy right here, and he applied for my company, and I asked him, what is the minimum hourly rate that you want? And this guy said, well, I want to get paid at least $15 an hour because I have experience. This guy right here said, well, I'm still in high school, and $10 an hour will be okay for me. And then this guy over here said, well, I just moved from California. I have been working for a company for many, many years, and I think I expect at least $30 an hour. Okay, so these are the three guys that apply to your company. Now, if you look at how much they want in wages, the first thing that comes into your mind is, okay, what we need to do is hire the worker that is willing to work for the least amount of money. But in reality, that's not how companies make money. Companies look at the cost of the resource, and they also look at the productivity of that resource, right? How much revenue is this resource is going to look. So they look at what is called the marginal physical product. How many units can this guy make an hour? How much can I sell this product? Because that's going to give me my additional marginal revenue, the additional revenue I'm going to get. Look at this. Let's assume that guy number one, right? He can come into my company and he can produce 20 units an hour. That's something that we do it manually. And I can sell these units for $1. So then this guy is going to bring to my company $20 an hour. That's how much he's bringing to my company. So the additional revenue, if I hire this guy, is going to be $20. My additional cost is going to be $15. My marginal cost. This is how much I have to pay him. This is how much he's going to bring to my company. So then the question is, does it make sense for me to hire this guy? And the answer is yes, because the additional revenue is higher than the additional cost. Now look at the second guy. The second guy, has a little bit of experience, and he can make 13 units an hour, right? And again, I can sell those units for $1, so he's gonna bring to my company $13. Now this other guy, he's very, very, very good, and he can actually make 45 units an hour, right? So he's bringing to my company $45 an hour. And his cost is $30. So now look at this. Based on this, which guy will you hire first? If you want to hire a guy, which one will you hire? 1, 2, or number 3?
3, because the revenue is greater than the cost.
Yes, sir, because this guy is going to bring to my company $45 an hour. I only have to pay him $50. So this guy is going to bring to my company, or to me, $15 an hour in profits. Look at guy number 2. Guy number 2 is going to bring to me only what? Only $3. And guy number 2, he's going to bring to my company $5 additional. So if I was to hire guys, guy number 3 will be the number 1 guy that I will employ. And if I want to hire a second guy, I will go for guy number 2 because he's bringing $5 more than what I'm paying. And then the last guy that I will hire will be the guy that's going to bring to my company 3. So as you can see, the cost of the resource is not that factor that determines if you're going to input that resource. What's going to determine if you're going to buy that resource is the productivity of that resource. In other words, what is the additional revenue that this resource is going to bring me? Does it make sense? So then if you have a dream of making very high salaries, then you have to aim for being very productive, because the more productive you are, the higher your output, right? The higher the revenue for the company, and the easier it will be for this company to pay you what you ask. Are you with me? So we're trying to understand the issue of cost. So then when a company opens its business, before they even, let's say this is we have a dream of opening a burger joint. We're gonna sell burgers. Before I sell my first burger, a company already experienced cost. For example, the company is gonna have to pay rent. Let's assume that this company is going to pay rent. So the company is going to spend, let's say, $5,000 a month on rent, right? The company is gonna have to buy the grills, $3,000 in grills that they purchase, right? Let's assume that that's all I need, you know, another $1,000 for the other appliances like refrigerators and things like that. So before I even open my door, I have already spent $9,000. If I sell one burger or 1,000,000 burgers, it doesn't really matter. I'm already spending $9,000, right? So then what I'm trying to tell you is this, that a typical company buy resources, and so some of those resources, the cost of those resources are fixed. So we have fixed costs, and then we have variable costs. The fixed costs are the costs that do not change as my output change. So as you can see, for this company that is going to make burgers, the fixed cost in this case is $9,000. And the variable cost is the cost that the company is going to incur when they hire workers, when they buy tomatoes and lettuce and mayonnaise and all the other things that we need to buy to be able to make the things that we are producing. So fixed costs are costs that do not change as output change, and variable costs are those costs that change as output changes. So then my total cost of production is always going to be equal to my fixed cost plus my variable cost. So for example, in the first day, let's assume that I hire one guy, and this guy, I'm gonna pay him $100 a day, and I purchase $50 in ingredients, right? So my total cost is $9,000 that I already spent, plus $100 that I paid to my worker, plus the $50 in ingredients, which is my variable cost. So then my total cost at the end of the day is now $91.50. You see? So that's what total cost is. So total cost is all your fixed costs plus all your variable costs. Any questions? So now let's talk about variable costs and how variable costs change. Okay, look at this. If I have a business, right, and I hire one guy, this is, let's say this is inputs. One guy. And this guy costs me $100 a day. Okay, so now this is my cost. Okay, this is my total cost. My total cost is $100. So, and this is my output. This is the amount of units that we can produce. Okay, so now think about this. I hire one guy to run my burger joint. I have a burger joint out there, and he's going to make burgers. Now, this guy, he's going to cost me $100. Now, the output that this guy is going to generate, well, let me make, yeah. The output this guy is going to generate, let's say, is 120 burgers. So the output is $120. Okay. So now, well, let me simplify it easy in another way, and then I'll repeat it. Okay. So this is inputs. This is output. I hire one guy, and this guy is able to generate, let's say, he's going crazy back and forth. He can make 30 burgers by himself an hour. Now think about this. This is a guy that is taking the orders in the register. He's working on the grill. He's giving back. It's a little window. It's a little taco truck, but he's selling burgers. So this guy can make 30 burgers an hour. I'm talking about, one every 2 minutes. So he's good. Then I realized that this guy is going crazy. So I decided to help him by hiring another guy. So now we have two guys, and the two guys together now are more productive because they begin to specialize. So now the output increased, let's say, to 80. The output increased to 80. Then I hire another guy to come and help him to make the burgers, right? And now the output goes to 140. This is the number of burgers that we're making. Then I go with the next guy, and now my output increased to 180. Then I hire the next guy, and my output increased to 200. Now, look at what happened to my marginal product, my additional product. The first guy brought me 30 more burgers. How about the second guy? How many more burgers did he brought me? He brought me 50 more burgers. See, it went from 30 to 80. The third guy brought me plus 60 more burgers. This guy brought me plus 40, and this guy brought me plus 20. See, there's a law of economics that always applies in productivity, and the law of economics simply says this. He said, look, if you continue changing one input and everything else is changed, the additional benefit that you're going to get out of this input is going to increase. But eventually, the additional benefit that you're going to increase is going to begin to decrease, and it is possible that you reach a point in which by hiring one more guy, you're going to get absolutely no additional benefit. Now think about this. If we already have 5 guys working for my company and we are making 200 burgers an hour, and I decide to hire one more worker and my output did not change, can you give me an explanation why this can be possible? A hypothetical reason, probably that's why this happened.
Maybe it's like
your store could be too small.
I didn't hear you.
There we go.
Repeat what you said. Was it Alex, the one that you were talking?
Well, we both kind of said the same thing, where it's too small. There's too much people around.
Exactly. In other words, probably at this point, the taco truck is so full that by bringing more people, instead of producing more, you're going to produce less because the people are going to get in their way. Or it is possible that at 5 workers, your grills are already working to the maximum. So it doesn't really matter how much workers you bring. Your output is not going to change because the output is no longer determined on how many workers you have. Now, your output is going to be determined on how fast the grill will be able to cook those burger patties. Does that make sense? So then if you bring another guy, let's say we go with guy number 7, my output is still going to be at 200 because it doesn't really matter how many workers I have. Now it is the grill, the one that is limiting my output. So then the only way I will be able to make more than 200 burgers is if I find another taco truck, or I just simply buy a bigger grill, or I implement a new technology. So now think about this. If I'm paying my workers, and all of them want to get paid the same amount of money, now think about this. This guy is bringing 30 burgers. He's bringing a lot of productivity. And then this guy bring me even more. And then this guy bring me more. And then this guy bring me less. And then this guy bring me less. And then this guy brings me less, which is simply representing that there's a limit on the amount of workers a company is going to hire. When you reach a point in which the additional workers brings absolutely no additional marginal revenue, then why will you hire that people? Or why will you hire that individuals? So when you say that there's no limit on the amount of workers, the answer is that's baloney, right? Because there's a limit on the number of people you will hire, because it's possible that you will get absolutely no benefit by hiring more workers. And not only with workers, also with machines. You bring machines and new machines and more machines and more machines and more machines, it's possible that you get absolutely no benefit, probably because you don't have all the resources to complement the machine. You don't have operators, for example. So then companies make a calculated risk or a calculated assessment to be able to determine what is the right combination of the inputs that you're going to use, right? So let me go back and now begin the PowerPoint presentation, okay? Let's see, share screen, and we go here. Okay, so we're trying to understand the cost of production. Let me come here, okay, so yeah, I'm right in the right place. Okay, the cost of production. So then, as you can see then, for some reason, okay, the cost of production. So as you can see, then costs are not the only consideration when a company is going to decide to hire an input. Just like an example that I gave you, paying $10 an hour to a typist who type 90 words per minute is a lot cheaper than paying $2 an hour to a typist that only type 10 words a minute. In other words, we don't look at only how much you want to charge me, but I'm going to be looking at your productivity, the productivity. Right? For example, if this guy can type 90 words a minute, he can type 5,400 words an hour, divided by $10 an hour, is able to generate 540 words for every dollar that I pay. But look at the other guy. The other guy, he can only type 10 words a minute. That will be 600 words in an hour, divided by 2 is 300 words for every dollar that I spend. So as you can see, then for you, it will be cheaper to go with a guy that is more productive. In other words, it will be better to pay the $10 an hour than to pay the $2 an hour, okay? So then in this chapter, we're going to try to understand production, the production functions, how they actually move. For example, how much can we produce with a given combination of land, labor, and capital? What are we going to do about fixed assets? What are we going to do on the long run? What are we going to do on the short run? Okay, so put this in your notes. A typical company can change inputs. You can change inputs at any time you want. But there are some inputs that require more time to be able to change. And we call those fixed inputs. And there are some inputs that you can change without no problem. They are just variable inputs. So then you can put it in a different way. And this is what you're supposed to put on your notes. Fixed inputs can only be changed on the long run. And variable inputs can be changed on the short run. Now, again, on the long run is a time that will allow you to change all the inputs. So on the long run, you can change not only the variable input, but you can also change the fixed inputs. But on the short run, you can only change the variable inputs. Now, Mr. Hasso, how long is the long run and how long is the short run? Well, there's not like a calendar amount of time. It's just a time. Let me give you an example. For a burger joint, what is a fixed input? Give me an example of a fixed input for a burger joint.
Utilities. The grill.
Okay, the grill. Okay, the grill is a fixed input. Utilities, I guess it can be fixed, because it doesn't really matter. You make one burger, two burgers, you're going to pay the same amount of electricity.
Yeah.
Right. So, but think about, for example, let me use the issue of the grill. Okay, my grill is a fixed input. The workers are variable inputs. If there's a lot of demand for my burgers, I can put an ad on the newspaper, and by tomorrow I'll be able to find a worker. That'll be no problem. Now, if I still need to make more burgers and I need a bigger grill, how long will it take me to buy a new grill for my burger joint? How long will you think it will take a restaurant to be able to find a new grill? 3 days, 4 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Couple months.
Couple of months? I mean, I think that if I'm here in Chattanooga and I have a burger joint, I can go to Knoxville, right, at a restaurant supplier, and I can probably find my grill in 1 day or 2 days. It's a grill. Even if they have to be special order, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. By the time it's assembled and delivered to your place. A custom grill, 5 weeks. So I can say that a grill, I can change it easily in a month and a half. Just a grill, right? Now, think about, for example, a car producing company, a car manufacturing plant. And some of the fixed input they have is the machine that assembles the automobiles. How long will it take for General Motors to be able to change the production line? And as you can see, the story is a little bit different. Probably for this company, it's going to take 8 months, 10 months to change the whole production line. So then for General Motors, 8 months is a long term. For a burger joint, a long term can be 5 weeks. So then a long run is just a time that will allow you to change a fixed input. And that changes according to the industry we are talking about, okay? So in order to produce, we already told you that a company needs inputs. We need land, we need capital. If we don't have the factors of production, then my production will be 0, right? So if we have a fixed land, and remember what land means in business? By land is resources in economics, and capital is machinery. So with a given resources and given machinery, if we add more workers, we're going to increase our productivity. So with a given land and capital, adding more workers will increase productivity. At the beginning, as I add more workers, right, my output begin to increase. But then as I continue to adding more workers, eventually these workers are going to overwhelm the available capital. Like in the example that I gave you. If I continue adding more workers and more workers and more workers, then now my grill is going to be affected by, you know, my productivity, or my grill is going to impact my productivity, you know, because now it is how fast my grill will be able to cook the burgers to be able to determine the output. So then the production of any factor of production depends on the amount of other resources. In other words, how productive a worker is depends not only on how productive the guy is by himself, but also the other resources that he's utilizing. For example, look at this in this case. This is a company that produces jeans. This is jeans output and this is labor inputs. If I hire one guy to go ahead and be working the sewing machine by himself, this guy can make, let's say, 15 jeans a day. So then the first guy brought me a marginal physical product, an additional product of 15 units. I hired the second guy to come and help this guy, and now together they can produce 35. So as you can see, then the benefit of the second guy was actually what? From 15 to 35, so the second guy brought me 20 units. See, my total output increased to 35. The first guy was giving me 15, then the second guy, together with the first guy, now they can produce 35, so the second guy brought me a benefit of 20 units. When I hired the third guy, we went from 35 to about 45. So 15, 20, 10, look at the third guy. When I went to the fourth guy, it went from 45 to about 47. 3 units. And then 2 units. And then 1 unit, and then 1 unit, and then it was actually what? Negative. So as you can see, capital is fixed, and as labor increase, output increase, but ultimately at a slower rate. In this case, output reaches its point at 0.8. And the way we measure the additional output is called the marginal physical product. The additional product produced by this new factor. That's the MPP, the marginal physical product. See, in the example that I give you at the beginning, when we were making burgers, remember, I hire one guy, and this guy can make X number of burgers, so this is the additional output. That's called the marginal physical product. Remember in the example that I was giving you about the 3 guys that applied to my company, and one of them wanted $30 an hour? Well, he was able to produce 45, so the 45 is the marginal physical product. The second guy, how much did he wanted? He wanted 10. Well, his output was only 13. His marginal physical product was 13. And the first guy, I think he wanted, recalling this by memory, how much did he wanted the first guy? He wanted $15 an hour, and his output was 20. So then the marginal physical product is 20, right? So then marginal physical product goes up as we hire more people. I'm sorry, the total product goes up as we hire more people, but the marginal is always decreasing, or it begins to decrease very fast. Let me give you an example right here. Look at the blue line. This is the total output when we hire workers. One guy, 15 units. Two guys, 35 units. Three guys, 45 units. Four guys, almost 50 units. But the first guy only brought me 15 units. The second guy brought me from 15 to 35, brought me 20. And as you can see, this is 20. And then after that, boom, only 10, right? And then a little bit like 5, and then like 2. So as you can see, the law of diminishing returns simply says this. The marginal physical product, the additional benefit of a variable input, decline as more is employed in a given quantity if we keep everything fixed. In other words, there's a law of economics. It's called the law of diminishing returns that simply say the additional benefit that you're going to get by hiring one more input eventually is going to reach a point in which it will be 0. And it doesn't really matter what you do, guys. If you only change one input, whatever input you want, you can reach a point in which you get absolutely no benefit. For example, think about my burger joint. I hire more workers, and then I reach a point in which I'll be making a mistake by hiring more workers because I'm getting no benefit. The same thing will happen if I added a better grill and a better grill and a better grill and a better grill, right? It's going to reach a point in which I get no benefit by doing that. So then as an owner of a company, you're always looking at ways of reducing your cost. So the way you are able to reduce your cost is by looking at the cost of a resource, and then you compare the cost of a resource to the output of that resource or to the productivity of that resource. And we always going to buy the resource that will be more productive at a lower cost. That's why in the United States, for example, when you go and drive in the highway, you see probably a highway that is being under construction, and you see few guys with a lot of machinery. You see few guys with a lot of machinery. We have the bulldozers and the big tractors and all that equipment that they need. If you go to a developing nation, the story is totally different. What you see is a lot of people working with very few machines. Now the question is, why in developing nations they use a lot of people instead of machines? And the answer is because hiring people is cheaper than hiring a machine. Because think about this, think about, for example, a bulldozer. How much rock can a bulldozer, excavate from the ground a day? I'm talking about going to a mountain and take out rock. How much a bulldozer can do? Well, a lot. Can 100 guys do the same thing as a bulldozer? I don't know, maybe. 150? How about 200 guys? Yeah, 200 guys for sure will do what? The same work a bulldozer can do. So then the individual make a decision. Is it better for me to go with the 200 guys or buy the bulldozer? Well, if the workers are willing to work for $2 an hour, if they're willing to work for $2 an hour, we're talking only about what? 2 times 2 is $400 an hour that you spent. Now, how much is the rent of a bulldozer? If you want to lease a bulldozer, how much does it cost you? Well, a bulldozer probably will cost you about $1,500 an hour to lease it. So then you have the choice, $400 an hour, 200 workers, or one bulldozer and pay $1,500 an hour. And the answer is makes no sense to me to lease my bulldozer. So I'll go with the workers. Anybody know what is the price of a bulldozer? We're talking about $800,000, $900,000, $1 million. So then when you want to lease it for a day, that's about how much you pay. It's not uncommon to pay $8,000, $10,000 a day to use one of those bulldozers. And you rent the bulldozer, and then you rent the bulldozer with an operator because they're not going to let just any crazy guy operate the machine. So then companies make a what? They make I guess, a cost analysis. Okay, for every input that we're going to get, we're going to have to pay for these inputs. There's a cost for resources. So then think about this. The sales manager of a company always wants to maximize sales. The production manager wants to minimize cost. And the owner wants to maximize profits. So as you can see, inside a company, there are totally three different conflicts of interest. The owner wants to maximize profits. So it is possible that I can maximize profits by reducing my production cost. Or it's possible that I can maximize my profit and you just simply sell more. But in order to sell more, I have to produce more, and my production manager is probably going to not be very happy that his production cost is going to go up. Which I'm simply trying to tell you is that it is possible that in a typical company, the objectives of the departments will be in conflict with each other. They will be in conflict with each other. So then it's the responsibility of the owner of the company to try to align these interests and try to put them in the order of priorities, right? Because what we want to do at the end is maximize my profits. So then to maximize my profits, what do I need to do in each of the departments, right? Because again, there's no reason to expect that these goals, all of them are going to take place at the same level of output, right? So then what we know is this, that as we hire resources, the marginal physical product begin to decrease. The additional, look at this, the first guy brought me 15 jeans. The second guy brought me 35 jeans or something like that. You remember? So this is the additional product. But as we hire more workers, look what happened to my additional cost. So what is this is telling you is this, guys. As we bring new workers into my company, my additional cost is going up. But at the same time, my additional cost is going up, the productivity of these workers is actually coming down. So it's costing me more to hire another guy, as a whole for the corporation, because the contribution that this guy is going to bring to the company is going to be actually less than the contribution of the first guy. So then the question is, okay, so where do we stop? Where do we stop? How many workers do we hire? See, because as marginal physical product decreases with added workers, we continue to pay the added workers, but we get less added product with each added worker. So then the added cost per unit actually increase. My additional costs begin to increase. Remember this, guys, in economics, what we really put attention is at the additional, not the total, but the additional. That's what is important, the additional cost. The additional cost is what is important. We look at the marginal cost. What is the additional cost of doing this activity? We don't look at all the costs. We look at the additional cost, right? So the additional cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in output. Okay, that's my marginal cost, the additional cost divided by my output. It goes like this. I'm spending $1,000 in workers. I'm spending $1,000 in workers. I hire one more worker and my cost goes to $1,200. Right, it went to $1,200. But the output by hiring this one additional worker went up by 100 units. So then the question is, how much is my marginal cost? Okay, listen to my question again. I'm presently spending $1,000, right? I hire another guy and my cost increased now to $1,200. To $1,200. My output changed, and let me change the numbers. My output changed from, let's say, from 1,600 units to 1,700 units. When I was spending $1,000, I was producing 1,600 units. I hired another worker, my cost went to $1,200, and my productivity increased to 1,700 units. How much is the marginal cost? In other words, how much did each unit additional unit cost me?
2?
Yeah, how much did my output increase?
200.
It
Oh,
increased
output, sorry.
Yeah, output increased by 100, and my cost increased by how much?
200.
By 200. So how much did each unit cost me? It will be
$2.
It will be $2 a piece. Since the change in total cost, which will be 200, divided by change in output, which will be 100. So then each unit cost me $2. Okay. So if each unit is gonna cost me $2, and I can only sell it for $175, would it make sense for me to hire this guy? And the answer is no, because my additional cost, my marginal cost, is going to be $2 per unit, and my additional revenue is only going to be $175. I can only sell it for $175. So it would be stupid for me to hire this guy, because by hiring this guy, I'm going to lose 75 cents or 25 cents in every unit. Does that make sense? So that's how companies make decisions of inputs. They look at the additional cost, the additional revenue, the additional product, okay? So then when marginal physical product decreases, marginal cost is actually increasing, because now, let's go back to the example. I cannot even tell you how many workers I have. I'm just telling you that now I'm spending 200 units. I'm sorry, I'm spending $200, right? Now, if I hire one more guy, my cost is going to increase, and my output is going to also what? It's also going to change. But it is possible that my output is going to change at a smaller rate compared to the previous employer. So then the cost per unit of this new guy, to me, is going to be actually higher. Okay? And again, it's just a little bit that you need to understand that when a company is looking at a cost, they look at how can I reduce my cost of production? And you don't look at the total, you look at the additional. Look, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I was talking to my neighbor a couple of years ago in my old house. His name is Bradley Jordan. And Bradley Jordan is the CEO of the Coca-Cola bottling plant here in Chattanooga, in Cleveland, I'm sorry. He just retired a couple of years ago, so he's no longer the CEO, but he was with the company for about 30 years. You know, in one conversation that we had, I remember this a couple of years ago, you know, we were talking about fixed costs and variable costs and things like that. And he told me, Hasso, when we, at this plant here in Cleveland, are thinking about how we can reduce costs, we don't think about let's reduce costs by $600,000 or let's reduce costs by $70,000. That's not the way we think. The way we think is how can we reduce costs by every unit of output that we produce? And this is the numbers he gave me, and this would blow your mind. He told me, Hasso, if we can reduce the cost of production by 1 cent for every 100 cans of Coke that we make. Now think about this. If we can reduce the cost of production by 1 cent for every 100 cans of Coke that we make, in other words, by 1/100th of a penny, that this plant alone in Cleveland will save $100 million in production cost. Now think about that for a second. It's mind-blowing. I mean, you make 100 cans of Coke and you save 1 penny. And then you make another 100 Cokes and you make another penny, you save another penny, and so on. You say, if we can do that, if we just get 1 penny for every 100 cans that we make, this plant will reduce the cost of production by $100 million. So it gives you an idea about the number of soft drinks that this company is making, right? And that's how companies think. We think about the additional, right? So the total cost is the total cost that we incur in producing something. It includes the fixed cost plus the variable cost, which we already discussed that in. So then total cost equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. What are fixed costs? They are cost of production that do not change when the output change. And the variable cost is the cost of production that changes when the rate of output changes. So then the payments for the fixed cost, they are fixed. Doesn't change. You know, the cost for the plant, for the equipment, you have to pay them even if production is 0. They do not increase or decrease if you change your output. Now, payments for variable input, they change as your output changes. For example, labor cost, raw material. So then at zero output, the cost is zero. In other words, you're not producing nothing, you don't have no variable cost. But as your cost increases, then your variable cost will begin to increase. Okay? So then if we were to create a graph about total cost and variable cost, it will look something like this. Look at this. Let's assume that I'm spending $100 in fixed costs. So it doesn't really matter how many jeans I'm making. My fixed cost is going to be fixed, $100. Right? My variable cost, which is right here, look at this. When I'm producing zero, I don't have no workers. But when I hire one worker, my variable cost is going to increase. So my variable costs begin to increase as I hire more workers to produce more. So then I already know that my total cost is equal to my variable cost plus my fixed cost. So then when I'm making 0 units, how much is my total cost? Well, in this case, my total cost is 100 because I'm not paying nothing on variable cost. I'm only paying on fixed cost. So it's 100. So as I begin output, my total cost begin to increase. Okay. So now this is the additional. Now let's talk about the average. How do I find the average total cost? Well, that will be my total cost divided by quantity. It goes like this. If I'm spending, let's say, $1,000 in cost of production, I'm spending $1,000 in the cost of production, and I'm making, let's say, 100 units. Then how much is my average total cost? It will be 1,000 divided by 100 equals to what? 10. Which simply means that each unit is costing me $10. Does that make sense? Is that right? Yeah. If my total cost is 5,000 and I'm only making 2 units, how much is my average total cost? Well, I'm spending 5,000. I'm only making 2 units, so each unit costs me $2,500. That's the average. So then the average fixed cost is the total fixed cost divided by the quantity of output in a given time period. It was how much I'm paying in fixed cost divided by the number of units that I'm making. Right? And then my average total cost will be, well, my average variable cost will be my variable cost divided by my quantities. Okay? Guys, this will be a good point to take a 10-minute break. It is 1:25. Let's be back at 2:35. Let's be back at 2:25. Let's be back at 2:35. Okay, is that right? It's 2:20. Hold on. That'll be 2:25. Let's be back at 2:33. No, 2:43. No, hold on. Let's be back at 2:40. Okay, take time. We'll be back at 2:40. I don't even know what time it is, you know. So 2:40. Okay, we'll be back, guys. So again, we're trying to understand how cost of production looks. And let me repeat that again. At the beginning, the cost of production is very high. But as you begin to make more and more and more units, on the average, your average cost of production begin to decrease. Then it reaches the lowest point. Then if you pass this level of production, let's say you pass 1,000 units, on the average, your cost of production begin to increase. So we say that companies tend to experience economies of scales. In words, economies of scale simply means that the more you make, the lower your cost of production. Then you reach the lowest point, and then if you pass this point, then your cost of production begin to increase, and that will be these economies of scales. These economies of scales. And this point right here is called the constant return to scale. Okay, So this is how average total cost always looks. At the beginning, companies spend a lot of money. The more they produce, the lower the cost of production, the cost of production, the cost of production, and eventually reach a point in which there's nothing they can do because they'll be very efficient. Let me explain this, for example. Let's assume that I'm going to have a burger joint, okay? And I'm already paying, let's say, $2,000 in fixed costs. Okay, in fixed costs. Now I hire one guy, and this guy's going to cost me $100. So before I was making anything, I was already spending $2,000. Now I'm spending $2,100. Let's assume that I'm making 10 units at that level of workers, one worker. So then how much is my average total cost? Will be $2,100 that I'm spending. Remember, average total cost equals to total cost divided by output. So I'm spending $2,100, I'm making 10. So at this point, on the average, each of those units that I'm making cost me $210. So now I hire another guy. So now I'm spending $2,200. I hire another guy. This guy cost me $100. So now I hire another guy and my output increased to 30. How much is the average total cost at that level of output? So it will be my total cost, which will be $2,200, divided by my quantity, which will be equal to 30. Somebody tell me on that. 2,200 divided by 30 equals to what? Okay, what do you
have? 73 with some
73?
change. But,
yeah. So as you can see, my average total cost of production is dramatically decreasing. Then I hire another guy. So now my cost of production increased to $2,300, but now my output increased to 60. So now it will be 2,300 divided by 60 will be what?
About $38.
About $38. So as you can see, the more I'm producing, my cost of production, but eventually, remember, when we continue hiring guys, the more guys I hire, we reach a point in which we get no additional benefit. The constant return to scales, or what is called the low diminishing return. So then at that point, my cost of production will increase. There's nothing I can do. So then companies have a dream, and the dream is to be able to operate at the lowest cost of production. That does not mean that they're going to be able to do that. It simply means that that's the objective, that's the goal. I want to produce at the lowest cost of production. But it is possible, for example, there's no demand, and it will be stupid for you to make 60 units, and you're probably going to end up at 30 units, and you're actually not producing at the most efficient method. Right? You're spending too much money in production, and the reason is because you're not producing enough. So to reduce the cost of production, you have to what? To produce more. So now, if I put all the curves on a graph, this is how I look. My average fixed cost will decrease, 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 and it will continue decreasing, but it will never gonna touch the line because that will be whatever I'm spending on fixed cost divided by the number of units. So the average fixed cost is always a downward sloping curve, always going down, 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 but they never going to intersect. And the reason is because something divided by something is always going to be something. It's never going to be zero, right? That's the average total cost. The average fixed cost. The average total cost is always look like a U. And the marginal cost, the additional cost of production, always looks like this, and it will always intersect the average total cost at its lowest point. That's just something you need to remember, that if I put a graph and I put the average total cost of production, it'll always look like a U. And if I put my marginal cost always look like this. Right? Which simply my marginal cost will intersect the average total cost always at its lowest point. Hold on for a second. No problem, Nathaniel. You need to go. I understand. You have to 3:15, right? Yeah, no problem. Okay. So that's something that we need to understand, that the marginal cost will intersect the average total cost always at its lowest point. And again, all these guys, all this is a foundation for us to be able to understand the decisions that companies are going to be making, and we're going to learn about that. Think about this. We have different companies We have companies that have no competition, for example, monopolies. And then we have companies that have a lot of competition, like restaurants. So then the attitude or the behavior of a restaurant is going to be totally different than the behavior of a utility company. Right? So we need to understand then, how do companies determine the best level of output? How do a company determine how many units they're supposed to make? And that's what we're going to be learning in the next 4 chapters. At this point, we're just simply trying to understand an introduction of, you know, fixed cost or variable cost or just general cost, okay? So you already know this, okay? And again, just like I told you, the average total cost is always look like a U-curve. The average total cost always look like a U-curve. The average fixed cost is always going down, but it's never going to intersect this curve. And the average variable cost begin to increase, and then the marginal cost will intersect the curve always at its lowest point, the marginal cost, okay? So now, let me come back right here. Again, this is a repetition of the things that we are learning. So this is where I wanted to go. The marginal cost always will intersect the average total cost at its lowest point. Just keep that in mind. It's going to be over and over again. The additional cost will always intersect the average total cost at its lowest point. Let me see if I can explain it to you in a way that will make more sense. Let's assume that your GPA is 3.8. If you make a B on this class, what's going to happen to your GPA? If you have a 3.8 and you make a B on this class, what's going to happen to your GPA?
It'll go down.
Why?
It'll go down. Because a B is a 3.0, so it'll pull the, and your average being a 3.8 is higher,
exactly.
So it'll pull it
So
down
now,
slightly.
think about this. Think about marginal cost. Think about marginal cost as your additional cost, and your average as your average. If this class, your marginal is lower grade than your total, is going to pull your grade down. Now, what do you have to make on this class to keep your 3.8?
A 90 or above?
No, because a 90 above will be 4.
Oh, I see.
A 3.8.
You have to make a 3.8. So then the only way they will be equal is when they are equal. But if you make an A on the class, which is higher than your average, what is the A is going to do to your average? It's going to increase. And as you can see here, if, in this graph, if your grade is 3.8 and you have a 3.8, your grade is going to be the same. But if you make an A on this class, your additional, your new grade, is higher than your average. So then, because it's higher, it's going to push your average to go up. So that's why they will always be equals when they are equal. If it's smaller, it will pull it down. If it's higher, it will pull it up. Okay? So now, in economics, we also need to understand that we look, in the cost of production, we look not only at the cost of that you actually pay, the explicit cost, but we also look at the implicit cost. Now, what is implicit cost? Implicit cost is the cost that you incur by using something that belongs to you. Okay? Let me explain this way. Okay, total cost equals to my variable cost plus my fixed cost. We already know that. That's what we learn in accounting. But in economics, we say, look, in reality, in many cases, if we want to know my total cost, I need to look at my explicit cost, and I also need to look at my implicit cost. Now, explicit cost is cost that you incur, things that you pay, payments that you make to other people. And implicit cost is the cost that you incur when you use something that belongs to you. Yeah, implicit. Cost that belongs to you. So let me explain how this works. Let's assume that one of you, let's say Alex, for example, Alex decides to open a little store. And Alex does not have to pay any rent on that little store because her grandmother owned that place and say, hey, Alex, you can use it for free. As a matter of fact, grandma died and give that little store to Alex. So Alex now, in this beautiful city, he has a store right there on the corner. Very nice intersection. You know, her grandmother died and say, you can use that, it's yours. So she decided to open a store there. So now think about this. When she opened the store right there, she don't have to pay any rent. So let's look at a situation, something like this. In her case, she's paying $200, let's say $2,000 a month on employees, and she's paying $200 in all the other things, raw material and things that she had to do for the display of her store and materials. So let's assume for simplicity, you know, that she's spending $4,000 a month on that building. I'm talking about rent, utilities, insurance, everything. It's $4,000. That's all she's spending. Now, the first week or the first month of operation, she had revenues of $5,000. So she had revenues of $5,000. Then we subtract her expenses of $4,000. And Alex is very happy because now she's making $1,000 in profits. An economist say, look, Alex, actually, that profit that you're making is nothing more than accounting profit. Because all you are doing is you're getting your revenue and you're subtracting your explicit cost. And explicit cost is the cost that payment that you make to other people. But in reality, you need to subtract also the implicit cost to be able to know your true economic profit, minus the implicit cost. Now, what is implicit cost? It's the cost that you incur by using something that belongs to you. Now, she don't have to pay rent. It belongs to her. That building belongs to her. But let's assume that that building can be rented to someone else for $6,000. So by using the building, she loses the opportunity of earning $6,000 in rent. So how much is the actual economic profit that Alex is making? So Alex is actually making an economic profit of negative $5,000. In other words, she's making less than what it is possible for her to make by just simply renting the building. Look at this. She's spending $4,000 on expenses in the building. She got $5,000 in revenue minus the expenses, and she's happy because she's made $1,000. But an economist said, no, Alex, this is a very stupid thing you're doing because you're making $1,000, but that's only an accounting profit. You know, to subtract to that your implicit cost. Implicit cost is the cost of using something that belongs to you, and it will be $6,000. So then your actual economic profit is negative $5,000. You are losing $5,000 by doing that business. It will be easy for you to go ahead and rent the place, and you'll get $6,000. And $6,000 is more than the $1,000 you are making now. So then by opening your business, you're actually losing an opportunity of earning $5,000 every month. Does that make sense? So economists will always look at all the cost that you incur and the cost of the opportunity cost. Look, let me put it another way. Let's assume that two of you, graduated from Lee and you become successful individuals and you keep in touch, and the two of you, one of you is earning $80,000 a year and the other one is earning, let's say, $70,000 a year. Right? So now you decide to go ahead and open your own business. And both of you go out and take money from your savings account. Let's say you take $50,000 from your savings account that you have, and you take $50,000, right, and you use that money to open the building. Boom, you are now in business. You have put $100,000 in that building. The $100,000 that you have put, you have not lost it. It's there. It's equipment that you have. Okay, so in other words, it's money that you have invested well. It's your money. It's still there. And let's assume that you will be able to sell it for the same amount of money. You purchased a used equipment. It was a great purchase. and you know that if you need to sell it, you're gonna be able to sell it for the same amount of money. Okay, so this is you. Now, at the end of the year, you have $500,000 in revenue. This is a consulting firm. You have $500,000 in revenue. You're spending $300,000 on expenses, everything you need. So that will be your explicit cost. So at this point, you are very happy because you have made $200,000 in profits. And economists say, yes, you are making $200, but that's only accounting profit because you have not subtracted your implicit cost. Now, what is the implicit cost we have to subtract? Well, think about the money they were making before. One of them was making $80,000, right? And the other one was making $70,000. So now by being in this business, they no longer have the opportunity of earning that amount of money. So now, as you can see, they're, at this point, the economic profit is no longer 200,000, it's a little bit less. What else are they losing? You remember they went to the bank and withdrew $50,000? Let's assume that the bank was paying them 10%. Let's assume that the bank was paying them 10%. So they have just lost what? An interest potential of $5,000 on this amount of money. So then we subtract the $10,000 on interest forgone. So as you can see now, the actual economic profit that they make is not 200,000, it's only 40,000. Does it make sense? Now, why is this important? Well, think about this. How about if these guys, both of them were making $100,000 before they opened the business? So we changed their salary before. So now you subtract $200,000 they were making in salary. So now minus the interest rate that they losing now. So now the economic profit is what? $10,000, which simply means by being in this business, they are worse off because now they are losing $10,000. Or in other words, they have $10,000 less than what they used to have before they opened the business. Does that make sense? Because by being in this business, they lost the opportunity of earning their income, and they also lose the opportunity of earning the interest rates. So they were making $210 before the business. Now they're only making $200, so they actually worse off by $10,000. Questions? Okay, so then implicit cost is the value of a resource used in production even when you make no payment. So economic cost equals to implicit plus implicit cost. Again, explicit, we can identify it. There are payments that we make. And implicit are the cost of resources that for which we make no payment. But there's an opportunity cost in that. Right? So then, as a businessman, we need to understand exactly how much we're paying. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the end of the chapter, guys. This is the end of the chapter. You already know what a long run is. Time enough that will allow you to change everything. So for example, it's possible that you operate it right here, and then you open a new building, and then you reduce the cost of production, then you open a new machine, buy a new machine, and you reduce the cost of production, but eventually you're going to reach a point in which you're already at the lowest, most efficient method, and there's nothing you can do to reduce your cost of production. Okay? And that's what I told you about economies of scales, these economies of scales, right? And that's the end of the chapter, guys. So